All right, EA Ermor, turn 57. We received 2 messengers from Ulm. So Ulm looks like they are selling hammers, and we do ask them how much they're selling them for. But we have our own route to hammers, so we don't really need any. I was really more just curious what this relatively experienced player felt was a fair price. We never did hear back. We also received a messenger probably directed only at us. Or possibly mistakenly directed at us. Not sure who they heard this from, that we were interested in fighting Femoria. We are not at the moment. We do not actually share a border with Femoria, so it's more or less impossible for us to actually do that. We have plenty of other concerns, so I let them know that no, it's not us that's interested in Femoria. Russ claims the throne of bureaucracy. I believe this is the one that they have taken off from Agartha recently. We try to do some arcane probing, searching for astral sites, which does not work out for us. We have 2 dire portents this turn, always a good sign. One of them is from Therados. They have put up Well of Misery, so this is a bunch of death gems every turn for them. I think it's like 20. And this definitely causes some consternation, in the game at large. Anytime any of the undead nations are getting a ton of death gems, then there's a good chance that this is going to get really bad for the living nations. And also it's an indicator that Therados is doing pretty well in the underwater battles. We don't really have eyes on that, but this is definitely an indicator that things are going better for them. So that's not ideal. We are a living nation, so we don't love a lot of things that undead nations can do with all those extra death gems. In the less bad news category, this is Machaca putting up Stellar Focus, which is like 5 Astral Pearls every turn. A lot less concerning, but still relevant. So, we'll need to keep an eye on that. Machaca is decently large, so could be somebody we have to be worried about in the future, but we have a lot bigger worries closer to home. We're bringing some more Vine Ogres in our quest for infinite skeletons, bringing in some more undead leadership for our Dust Walkers. Doing our spying, of course, a little more arcane probing, also doesn't work out. And then we catch some raiding between Ulm and Vanheim. So, this is just a relatively small, cheap raid against, minimal province defense here, which works out. And then we have like medium commitment from Ulm against minimal province defense, also works out. This is closer to home and a little more interesting. It's also just against pretty minimal province defense, but in this case, Russ has thugged out one of their normal commanders, who they've actually turned into their prophet and given like full kit, some of which is a little on the expensive side, like this is 10 air gems here. Of course, they are a hero, and this is, one of the good heroic traits. I think we might have seen this guy before. It gives him a fear aura. So this guy's actually fairly scary. He's got defense skill of 31, which is pretty high. That's, definitely even like high for the elf levels. And I just don't think these guys are going to be able to do anything to him. So we'll have to keep that in mind if we end up tangling with Russ. And, another indicator that things aren't going so great for Agartha, at least so far as we can see. Then we had some unexpected events. Trolls, not that surprising considering we found their droppings not too recently in that province. Sadly, I did not move anything out in there to block them. And then we gain a temple, and we have not recruited any of our Flamens, who are foreign recruit. And considering that we got a free temple here, I was thinking, okay, maybe this is a spot to put a lab, and then we can at least start recruiting a few of them. As much as I hate unforted temples, and the Flamens are really frustrating mages, I do think that they are very useful for early age Ermor, and my decision to try to ignore them completely and rely only on my pretender for diversity, in addition to whatever independence we find, was not the best one. I still maintain that you probably shouldn't be recruiting a lot of Flamens, but with the benefit of hindsight, and even at this point in the game, I felt like, okay, this is also right on our border with Russ, which has been peaceful the whole game. So, I felt like it's a free temple, so it's not going to hurt as much to put up the infrastructure. Like, let's go ahead and put up a lab here, and we can start to offload a few of the forging duties from our pretender onto hopefully useful Flamens. Of course, we'll probably only get fire 2 Flamens, because that's how it goes. That does mean that we got no tax income in that province that turn, which is not great. We buy some gems on the cheap. This is nice, especially since we have Misfortune. Then we foresee a major event. This is the People's Death Match, so no spell casting. We are, we're a human nation. We don't really have a ton of thugs, so we're not really planning on sending anyone to this. And then, of course, we lose the province to the trolls. I did not send anything out. And I will catch you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. We are finally in motion, moving against Agartha. Probably by this point, we have ended the non-aggression pact, and we are sending our army out. And it'll probably be, we'll send this group in advance, hopefully, we'll see. Or we may choose to send it actually at this province and then just lead with our main army against Agartha's capital, while also sending our forces from the south here. We are moving out the Dustwalkers, but pretty much just the Dustwalkers. They are fairly strong, so I think they should be able to raid pretty effectively against, light province defense. And we are at least retaking this province from the trolls. We're transferring some of the Vine Ogres anyway to our southern army. So we need replacement augurs, of course, as well. So we've got an augur communion here that are just going to make some fire elementals. And, if some of the trolls get through, we can use the Vine Ogres as blockers. Wouldn't love to lose them this way, so we are hoping that we're going to, make enough fire elementals that they'll be able to deal with the trolls, but, just in case, we also have the Vine Ogres. We are recruiting more troops this turn than we have in past turns. The Equite, of course, recruiting another Holy 3, which, I don't know. I'm back and forth on this. Basically, I feel like you need roughly like 1 Holy 3 per army, although it really does depend on the number of sacreds that you have. You could probably, since it's capital only sacreds, you could probably get away with mostly using bishops. Cavalry is kind of hard to bless, not hard to bless, but they don't pack in super tightly, so you do need a decent number of priests, particularly if you want to use lines of cavalry. That can be kind of challenging to get fully blessed with anything but a Holy 3. So Holy 3 a bit on the luxury side, but we're going for it. We're also recruiting some infantry at home, which definitely questionable. Speaking of questionable, more slingers. So we'll have plenty of siege strength anyway. And then this is a little less questionable. It's more infantry, yes, but this is just going to serve as a garrison to, hopefully dissuade Ulm, who is pretty busy at this point, and, so is Vanheim, but still, the idea of leaving a capital completely empty, I think, not a wise decision. We're also, of course, recruiting mages there. We should have full mage recruitment this turn, I would hope. Yeah, mostly doing augurs at this point, kind of switching back and forth between them. Yeah, periodically trying for another throne mage. And we're using our pretender to cast Auspex. So this is the air site searching, and this is exactly the kind of task that would be ideal to offload, onto the Flamens. Of course, the Flamens only ever be air 1, and we don't have the air breakpoint to forge any of the air boosters. But, perhaps if you were a little wiser than myself in your pretender creation and gave yourself air 4, you could forge one of the air boosters and then, use that air hat on an air random Flamen, and then they could do your, air site searching for you, etc., etc. But I did not do any of that, so our pretender is just doing some remote site searching. Otherwise, forging kind of a grab bag of gear, some astral boosters, probably for our Mind Hunter here, and then also a Skull Staff, which we might just want for like Lich production once we hit enchantment 8, or possibly to hand off to one of our mages in the army for some of the bigger spells that we want to cast. And that more or less covers it this turn in terms of what we're up to. We did spy on Russ's capital, and it looks like they've doubled down on Firebirds, which are pretty divisive. They just improve the events that you get, or increase the number of lucky events that you can get. Some people swear by them. Some people think they're, a huge waste of gems and not really worth it. I believe in order to get the bless that they got, Russ's scales are not exactly ideal. So I can understand why they, would want to try to take measures to increase the possibility that they get, luck like gold events, and of course getting extra mages or gems also always welcome. So someday if I ever play Russ, I'll probably, give the Firebirds a shot. I like to at least try things out once. Otherwise, though, not a ton in here. Skin Shifters, of course. They do have one of their heroes here, which is relevant, and some Corpse Constructs and Vine Ogres, just some trash. But it certainly doesn't look like, they're building up to attack us on this front. So, it looks like we're secure, at least for the moment. We are still interested, right, since, we're we're about to come into close contact with them. So we're trying to get a sense of, like, well, where, do they have large garrisons in other forts? Therados? Do they have large armies that are on the move somewhere else? Maybe are they fighting some of their other neighbors? We can see that they're fortifying this throne that they just took, which makes sense. We continue to scout Machaka, who's looking, pretty large. Still haven't found some of their neighbors. Finding some more Therados. We know that, Therados is also up here along this coastline. So, in addition to the fact that they have Well of Misery, it does seem like they're doing decently well. Anytime an underwater nation is able to hold on to a coastline, that's usually an indicator that things are at least going okay for them. It doesn't really look like anybody else has jumped in against Vanheim, at least not yet, right? Like, we don't see any forces pushing in from Femoria. We don't really see any Therodian flags popping up. Ulm also doesn't really look like they're taking advantage of also doesn't really look like they're taking advantage of the situation. They're probably just hanging out at home. Of course, Ulm this time, is doing a good amount of raiding, and their situation has improved considerably, so they're taking advantage of that major battle that they won. And then, we still have a non-aggression pact with Niflheim, but the Giants are starting to stack up in their capital, which is dangerously close to us, and, it's still kind of a mystery as to what they're up to right now. We haven't really taken a look underwater, and as far as I know, Oceania is still alive. Oceania has gone AI, so more or less defeated. In fact, the only underwater power other than Therados that's still around is Pelagia, and we've seen Pelagia, fighting with Ubar a little bit on the coastline. But this also indicates that things are probably going pretty well for Therados, and that Therados is probably going to be the major underwater threat, because it doesn't really seem like Pelagia has been able to make a huge amount of inroads against Ubar. The last time we checked, Ubar was still around. Of course, that does leave us with the question of, what is Niflheim up to? Will they be attacking us next? Obviously, we're about to be in a fairly vulnerable position here in a second as we prosecute this war against Agartha. Now, hopefully it goes relatively quickly, and if they do end their non-aggression pact with us, we'll be able to reposition some of our forces before they're able to invade and make too much progress. So yeah, I think that covers turn 57. All right, EA Ermor, turn 58. We receive 11 blood slaves from Abyssia. I forget the exact parameters of this trade, but we've been doing a couple trades back and forth. At one point, we forged them a skull staff. These blood slaves are specifically for an earth stone. And this turn, we also send them some astral pearls, I believe, as part of a combined attempt to dispel Well of Misery, because we are, well, maybe not all, but quite a few of us are fairly worried about that. Speaking of being worried about things, there's a dire portent, and this is Niflheim putting up Illwinter, so that's not going to be great. We are a fire nation, and this will turn the whole world cold. It will increase unrest, so we're going to be getting less gold, and it will allow Niflheim to recruit more Nifl giants, which is not good, as those things are really tough to kill. So this is definitely in the bad news department. Unfortunately, we're already making the attempt to dispel Well of Misery, and we don't have very good astral income. We're pretty unlikely to be able to dispel this, so it could be some time before we get rid of this. We may never be able to get rid of it, especially since it's a blood global, and I imagine that Niflheim is doing a good amount of blood hunting. One of the benefits is we do have pretty strong heat scales, so it should be a bit of time, before that really starts to cripple us. We'll have to keep an eye on it. Our site searching goes a little bit better this turn, not in this case, so we miss with one. Doing our spying, of course, our pretender does find an air site, so that is very nice. Doing some twice borning, of course, bringing in more vine ogres, and then our manual site searching. This is astral pearls, so that's very nice. I believe this is a nature gem, also pretty nice, possibly a water gem. So we're definitely happy to be increasing our gem income. A couple of prophets come out, and then we have our battle against the trolls, where we have an augur communion, a relatively substantial one. It's going to make some fire elementals, and then we have some vine ogres who hopefully will do nothing, but if it all goes wrong, they will block the trolls. And unfortunately, we're a bit slow in, getting our fire elementals out. That's one of the natures of communions. We do get some good evocations going off, but we managed to hit our own vine ogres with a lot of them, not to mention that they're getting bonked by trolls repeatedly. So we are losing quite a few vine ogres here. In fact, really like the majority of the vine ogres, I would say. So this does work out, but it's not the cleanest, considering that, we use some gems, and then we lose quite a few vine ogres. The majority of our vine ogres, only 2 of them survive. So that was not the best way to get rid of trolls, but we do at least get rid of the trolls, so that's good news. And then we have Russ attacking Agartha, and this is actually kind of on the edge of their empire near Niflheim. And I don't think we've seen this particular force yet. We've certainly seen elements of it. They've got, some of these sacred great bears. They're sacreds, they're skin shifters, of course. They also have a few of their cap-only mages here. Yeah, this lady potentially going to make fire elementals, a strong fire caster. Yeah, we've seen this thug before. I feel like we've seen elements of this, but this is the first time, that it's all been combined together. And they are up against just a little bit of fort province defense that Agartha has. So it looks like either they have nothing in the area or, they chose to hide inside the fort, which I think, is a pretty fair conclusion. That is a lot of skin shifters. Not a ton of mage support here, and, no bodyguards really, although a lot of these, right, like, this guy's going to be fairly tough to kill, and, especially the kitted out thugs, like, they certainly don't need bodyguards, so, maybe not so much of a need for bodyguards, but something to consider. So, yeah, that works out for them. They take no losses. It does look like there was an Earth Reader patrolling here. Not sure why that fellow was doing that. May have just been a mistake, or maybe they were expecting a much smaller attack from Russ. And then, of course, I forget the Wild Hunt is still active, so we moved our army, into this forest, and this is our prophet. So, yeah, and this is the main hunt. So, in addition to, a bunch of these dogs, there is the Lord of the Hunt himself, who's not particularly fearsome as far as like super combatants go, but I mean, it's still a 20 protection, 90 hit point giant, like size 6. So certainly going to be enough to deal with the one bodyguard who showed up, and our prophet here. In fact, our prophet just goes down to the dogs. So yeah, this probably won't be the last priest that I lose to this global. Certainly, if you just like messing with random people, Wild Hunt is a good one to put up. Although sadly, I don't think that Pelagi gets to see these battles. I don't know. I've never actually put it up myself. I'll have to do it sometime. And then we have some unexpected events beyond the Wild Hunt. So yeah, strange events, some unrest. We lose Dominion. Losing the Dominion is a bit sad, especially now that Illwinter is up. We find some Earth Gems. That's a good news department. More unrest, some misfortune. That's fine. We're pretty deep in misfortune anyway. And then I think we try to hop on top of one of Machaka's forts. Actually, no, this looks like it's just one of their provinces. This is a pretty massive province defense dump, so I don't know, maybe they're doing some blood hunting here, or, just a past war, where they're able to take advantage of. It's definitely a good province to PD dump in, since it's Bone Tribe, and that can be pretty fearsome. So we do, unfortunately, lose a scout to that. We cure some afflictions, our patrollers, and I'll catch you guys after the jump. Alright, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. This is the turn that we are launching our attack against Agartha. So we have quite a few attacks going off, actually a few more than it looks like, none of which are our main armies. So our main army is moving into this cavern system, although it is down a prophet. Luckily I have overbuilt Holy Threes, so that was fortuitous. And then we are moving our other raiding group out to capture this. We were trying to get rid of that horror cult, but taking provinces definitely going to be more important, especially considering that, Russ is starting to make pretty good inroads here. They have 2 relatively major forces. There's a lot of skin shifters over here. This is the force that we saw that jumped on top of this fort. They've cracked it immediately, so there's a good chance there's not much, if anything, in there. So we are moving to, try to preempt Russ from making any further gains. While we would really like this throne, we really just need Agartha and sort of to connect the rest of our territory. So, if Russ comes away with these, provinces, that's not ideal, but it's also not the end of the world. But we would like to forestall any further progress. So in this province, we're going to hit with the Dustwalkers. Pretty much just the Dustwalkers, not a whole lot to that plan. And then in this province, we actually are going to be doing some swarm raiding, right? We have some of these stealthy horticulturalists. And so we'll be doing a swarm raid here, and then we will also be doing a swarm raid over here, and then we will be attacking, with just some of our more militia type troops, just a mundane attack into this province. And I think that more or less covers our attacks. So we were able to hit the majority of our bordering provinces. This fellow was planning on, leading some troops, but we can't actually move through any of these passes here because now with Illwinter going up, and it is also the middle of winter. So these passes are going to more and more be closed as they do not have heat on both sides. And then we are just, kind of massing up our second army or second half of our army, as it'll probably just join forces with our southern group on top of Agartha's capital, because there really isn't any other location that we need to hit until we move down to this fort. But we're probably not going to be able to grab this fort, right, since there's a stack of skin shifters here. And while there are quite a few mages here, there's not too much in the way of troops, so I'm not really sure there's going to be enough to stop 50 skin shifters. Then again, there is a fortification under construction in this province, so possibly Russ, won't move out, but they seem to be moving relatively quickly, and Ulm is pretty busy and unlikely to threaten their fort, and it looks like they more or less have Agartha contained in the other directions, so they don't necessarily need to hang out on top of this. On the other hand, we did do some scrying here on top of Helheim, and again, there's not a whole lot here. These berserkers are not their sacreds, and it's mostly corpse constructs anyway, so while Russ has a lot of territory and they do have some scary armies, it doesn't actually look like most of it is very well defended, right? Like this is what they have in Hinnom, like just a few researcher types. So, we haven't really seen any other major armies or major garrisons in the rest of their territory. We're going to be able to bring a pretty substantial army to bear against them if, we come to blows like here in Agartha. Although ideally, right, with Niflheim still unaccounted for, we would not come to blows with Russ. There's probably other places we can go. I know that Abyssia has definitely been talking about Vanheim, and potentially we could grab the capital here, or at least a little bit of territory. Also, we would not love Ulm to get too much back onto their feet. This is a pretty good player, and Ulm is fairly weak, so we could just leave Vanheim to Abyssia, and then we could take out Ulm. That would certainly be an easier war than compared to fighting Russ. We're not going to send those augurs to reinforce our army here. I'm not sure if it was always the plan to move them to TNN, or if now that we've lost most of the vine ogres, I just decided that it's not really worth it. We do have quite a few vine ogres. I don't know about quite a few. We have some vine ogres up here that we can bring down and then distribute to this force down here. And we would like to beef up the number of mages that we have in TNN just to make sure that nobody gets any ideas related to that. Still recruiting some infantry, recruiting some acolytes, which is interesting. This is probably also again related to the horror cult, but also just our Dominion doesn't actually even connect here anymore, or may have at one point and then disappeared, or perhaps it never connected. So we are having Dominion issues down here, and just in general our Dominion is not in a great place, so we might try to do a little bit of preaching on our borders. We also might try to raise the Dominion here in this province in the hopes of getting rid of the horror cult. And then we still are doing quite a bit of troop recruitment. So yeah, this is probably planning on additional raiders here in case the other ones don't work out, and then recruiting more infantry because of course I am. And then we are also recruiting one of our better leaders. I do think if you're going to put together a really large army, these guys probably are worth it, and we are planning on putting together a pretty large army, so recruiting leadership for that. Otherwise, things are largely unchanged, at least so far as we're aware. Our research, we are getting close to Enchantment 8. We won't quite have it next turn, but we should have it the turn after that. So research is not progressing as fast as I would like, but it's also not going slowly. We definitely have been making, lanterns in the background. We definitely have various lanterns running around in places, so that has helped out our research significantly. And while we do have, quite a few scouts running around, we haven't really detected any new wars. So, we'll have to see. Also, it's not particularly relevant, but I don't know why no one has chosen to deal with these Edens. Edens are not particularly fearsome, And we have had this scout here. You can see from his experience, this scout, he's just been hanging out in this province for a long time, and will continue to do so. I've set him to hide and wait because I figured, well, surely this province will get recaptured, and then at that point I'll move the scout out, and then yeah, this does not get recaptured for quite some time, maybe ever. So eventually we just abandon this, but I have definitely forgotten about this scout's existence, and apparently this province just belongs to the Ettins now. So yeah, I think that more or less covers turn 58.